If someone from centuries ago time traveled to 2025, they'd be completely blown away by the towering skyscrapers, massive bridges, and engineering wonders that dot our cities.
Finally, the swinging road and the suspension cables give way and plunge into the water below.
However, this progress came at a price. Behind every modern marvel are lessons written in tragedy.
1,500 exotic fish are dead after the world's largest freestanding aquarium burst in Berlin.
Mistakes that cost lives and changed how we build forever. Number 20. Sampoong department store collapse. Seoul's Sampoong department store collapsed on June 29, 1995, killing 502 people and injuring 937. The building started as a simple plan for a 4-story residential apartment complex. During construction, Lee Jun, chairman of Sampoong Group's construction division, decided to transform it into a 5-story department store. Critical support columns were removed to make room for escalators, and a 5th floor was added.
As he runs into the emergency stairs, the ceiling above him collapses. There is only one thing above the 5th floor ceiling.
What made things worse was the decision to place 4 massive air conditioning units on the roof, which workers dragged across the structure, creating cracks as they went. The entire building was constructed on what used to be a landfill, and substandard concrete was used throughout. Cracks started appearing in the 5th floor ceiling that morning. Engineers warned the structure was unsafe, yet Lee Jun refused to evacuate because the store was packed with shoppers and closing would mean losing revenue. 5 hours before the collapse, loud bangs echoed from the upper floors as the air conditioning unit's vibrations widened the cracks. At 5:52 in the evening, workers finally sounded alarms and began evacuating people. 20 seconds later, the entire south wing pancaked into the basement. Rescue operations continued for 17 days, with the final survivor pulled from the rubble after being trapped that entire time. Lee Jun was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. But this isn't even the worst construction disaster. This next one will definitely give you chills. Number 19. Algo Center Mall collapse. Elliott Lake's Algo Center Mall opened in 1980, and from day one, water just kept dripping everywhere. Locals even started calling it Algo Falls because of how bad the leaking was. Everyone knew about it, everyone complained, yet nothing was ever really fixed. Fast forward to June 23, 2012, around 2:20 in the afternoon, when a massive 12-meter by 24-meter chunk of the rooftop parking deck just gave up and crashed straight through the ceiling. 2 people died that day, and over 20 others got hurt. Here's the thing, though. This whole mess started way back during planning. The architect didn't even want rooftop parking, but they went with it anyway to save money. Then they made it worse by choosing some experimental waterproofing system that saved $136,000. It failed right away. For years, salt water ate away at the steel underneath until the connections could barely hold 13% of what they were supposed to. An engineer even gave it the all-clear just weeks before everything came down. The inquiry called it a human failure driven by apathy, neglect, and greed.
Now, without identifying what the actual nature of the damage was, one shouldn't be surprised that the structure eventually gave way.
And then we have the bridge that couldn't even withstand the wind. Number 18. Tay Bridge Disaster. Scotland's Tay Bridge collapsed on December 28, 1879, during a violent storm that sent a passenger train plunging into the icy waters of the Firth of Tay, killing 75 people. The bridge had opened just 18 months earlier in June 1878 and stretched over 2 miles across the estuary, making it the longest bridge in the world at the time. Designer Thomas Bouch had made no explicit allowance for wind loads in his calculations, which proved to be a fatal oversight. The bridge's high girders lacked proper wind bracing, and the cast-iron columns supporting them were brittle and prone to cracking. Workers had reported the bridge shaking violently when trains crossed, but these warnings went unheeded. On that stormy evening, winds reached 70 to 80 miles per hour. A train entered the bridge around 7:15 in the evening, and witnesses watched sparks fly from the wheels before the lights suddenly vanished. Not long after, 13 spans of the high girders, totaling over 3,000 feet, had collapsed into the water. The inquiry revealed poorly made cast iron with internal flaws, inadequate inspection during construction, and foundations that had shifted. Bouch's reputation was destroyed, and he died within a year of the disaster. Then we have the bridge that was most likely cursed. Number 17. The Quebec Bridge. Quebec Bridge collapsed twice during construction. First on August 29, 1907, killing 75 workers, then again on September 11, 1916, killing 13 more. The cantilever bridge was designed to be the longest span in the world, stretching 1,800 feet across the St. Lawrence River. During the first collapse, engineers had reported warnings about excessive deflection in compression members, with steel beams buckling under loads they weren't designed to carry. The southern cantilever arm gave way at 5:37 in the evening, sending workers plunging into the river. Many workers were Mohawk ironworkers from Kanawak, and the disaster had lasting impacts on their community. The bridge was redesigned with heavier structural members, and construction resumed in 1913. In 1916, as the center span was being lifted into place, a casting failed and the span fell into the river. The bridge finally opened in 1917 after claiming 88 lives in total. And then there's the disaster that had been in the making for a very long time. Number 16. Champlain Towers South. Surfside's Champlain Towers South collapsed on June 24, 2021, at 1:22 in the morning, killing 98 people in less than 12 seconds.
Whatever the precise chain of events, the failure of the pool deck brings down the central and eastern towers in seconds.
The 12-story beachfront condominium had been showing signs of distress for years. A 2018 engineering report documented significant concrete deterioration in the pool deck and parking garage, warning of major structural damage that was accelerating. Salt water had been seeping into the foundation for years, corroding steel reinforcements and weakening concrete throughout the structure built in 1981. Reports from April 2021 described the deterioration as much worse than previously thought. A $15 million repair program had been approved, but work hadn't started when disaster struck. Surveillance footage and investigations revealed that the pool deck collapsed first, likely starting 7 to 12 minutes before the tower fell. The initial failure in the pool deck triggered a progressive collapse that spread through the eastern portion of the building. Rescue efforts continued for weeks, with the final victim identified on July 26th. Then we have another bridge that collapsed and claimed several lives. Number 15. Interstate 35 West Bridge collapse. Rush hour traffic in Minneapolis turned into a nightmare on August 1, 2007, when the Interstate 35 West Bridge over the Mississippi River catastrophically collapsed. The disaster killed 13 people and injured 145, sending vehicles plummeting into the river below. The 8-lane steel truss arch bridge, which had served commuters since 1967, carried approximately 140,000 vehicles daily before it failed that evening.
Crossing the I-35 bridge is an everyday commute for thousands of drivers.
The root cause traced back to a design error made decades earlier. Gusset plate U10 was half an inch thick when it should have been 1 inch thick, making it the weakest of the 14 plates. This single mistake, made over 40 years before the collapse, essentially guaranteed the bridge's eventual failure. Adding to the problem, resurfacing projects over the years had increased the bridge's weight by roughly 20%, placing a strain on the structure that it was never designed to handle. Up next, there's a disaster that is still remembered as one of Bangladesh's biggest tragedies ever. Number 14. Rana Plaza Garment Factory. Bangladesh's Rana Plaza collapsed on April 24, 2013, killing 1,134 people and injuring over 2,500.
In the decade before Rana Plaza, hundreds of people died in factory fires and building collapses in Bangladesh,
making it the deadliest garment factory disaster in history. The 8-story building housed 5 garment factories producing clothing for major Western brands. Large cracks had appeared throughout the structure on April 23rd. Shops and the bank on lower floors immediately closed, while factory owners on upper floors threatened workers with losing a month's wages if they didn't return the next day. Workers arrived for their shifts at around 8 in the morning on April 24th. A power outage struck moments later, and diesel generators on the upper floors activated, sending vibrations through the already damaged structure. At 8:54 in the morning, loud vibrations and rumbling noises erupted, causing workers to rush toward exits. The building collapsed completely at 8:57 in the morning, less than a minute after the vibrations began. It turns out the structure was originally designed as a 5-story commercial building for shops and offices. 3 additional floors were constructed illegally without permits to house the garment factories. Not to mention, the building was constructed on filled-in pond land, compromising its foundation from the start. Building owner Sohail Rana was arrested after a 4-day manhunt as he attempted to flee to India. But this wasn't the only construction project that ended in rubble, claiming lives. Number 13. Hartford Civic Center. Roof collapses. On the evening of January 17, 1978, 4,746 basketball fans packed Connecticut's Hartford Civic Center to watch UConn upset UMass 56-49. 6 hours later, at 4:19 in the morning on January 18th, the entire roof came crashing down. The 1,400-ton structure, covering nearly 2.5 acres, collapsed onto 10,000 empty seats below. Thanks to the timing, no one was injured. The arena had opened just 3 years earlier in January 1975, featuring a cutting-edge space truss roof designed using computer-aided technology. The innovative design promised to support more weight with fewer materials, saving the city $500,000. But the roof had been failing from the moment it was installed. During construction in 1972 and 1973, inspectors noticed deflections twice as large as computer predictions, and when fascia panels wouldn't fit due to warping, contractors simply welded them in place instead of using the designed bolt holes. Investigations later revealed design errors and a 20% underestimation of the roof's actual weight. And these design errors were the same reason why this next disaster happened too. Number 12. Hyatt Regency Walkway. Kansas City's Hyatt Regency Hotel was hosting a crowded tea dance on July 17, 1981, when an accident occurred with 2 suspended walkways weighing 64,000 pounds each.
Come to the Hyatt Regency immediately. 3 sky bridges fell in.
They were suspended by steel hanger rods, but a design change during construction doubled the load on connection points, far exceeding their capacity. The original design called for continuous rods running from the ceiling through both walkways. Instead, the 4th-floor walkway was supported by rods attached to it, and those same rods had to support the 2nd-floor walkway below. This configuration meant the 4th-floor connections carried twice the intended weight. At 9:07 in the evening, the 4th-floor walkway's connections failed, sending it crashing onto the 2nd-floor walkway below, and both structures plummeted to the crowded lobby floor together. Investigations concluded the walkways would have failed under just 1/3 of the weight they held that night. It ended up killing 114 people and injuring 216. The engineers were found guilty of gross negligence and lost their professional licenses, though they were cleared of criminal charges. The hotel reopened 3 months later with the walkways removed and additional structural reinforcements installed. Now here's one that turned out to be a nightmare for everyone living there. Number 11. Ronan Point Tower. London woke up to tragedy on May 16, 1968, when a woman on the 18th floor of Ronan Point Tower lit a match to make her morning tea. The gas stove had been leaking overnight. The explosion that followed was small, barely injuring the woman herself. What happened next was catastrophic. The blast knocked out load-bearing walls, and the entire southeast corner of the 22-story building collapsed like a house of cards, floors pancaking down from the 18th to the ground. 4 people died, 17 were injured. The tower had been open for just 2 months. Built using the large panel system, walls and floors were simply stacked and bolted together with no backup support. When one element failed, the whole section came down. Investigations uncovered shockingly poor construction. Walls weren't aligned properly. Bolts were missing or loose. The building was patched up and reopened, then demolished in 1986. Demolition crews found even worse defects than suspected. Imagine how bad it really was. But could it ever be as bad as this next one? Number 10. Teton Dam. Idaho's Teton Dam was cutting edge when it was finished in 1976, a massive earthen barrier built from compacted soil and rock. However, on June 5, 1976, the reservoir reached full capacity for the first time. Small leaks appeared. Workers rushed to patch them, but the leaks grew rapidly. By mid-morning, water was pouring through the dam. At 11:57 in the morning, the dam failed completely, releasing 250,000 acre-feet of water downstream. The towns of Wilford and Rexburg were devastated. 11 people died. Damage reached billions in today's dollars. It turns out all this happened because the dam was built on highly porous volcanic rock from a Yellowstone eruption over 2 million years ago. Water seeped through the rock, creating internal erosion channels that weakened the structure from within.
Don Ellis, a radio announcer, didn't have the words for what happened.
And the water is monumental, holy...
The dam lacked adequate drainage systems. Foundation preparation was inadequate. Quality control was poor. As a result, the Bureau of Reclamation was never allowed to rebuild it. While this one came out of nowhere, this next disaster was actually already warned about. Number 9. Morandi Bridge, Genoa, Italy. On a rainy morning in August 2018, the Morandi Bridge in Genoa met a fate that had been predicted for years. Around 11:36, a 210-meter section around Pillar 9 gave way during a torrential rainstorm, sending vehicles plummeting 45 meters onto railway tracks, the Polcevera River, and warehouses below. 43 people died. The bridge, designed by engineer Riccardo Morandi and opened in 1967, had a fatal flaw from the start. Its concrete-encased steel cables made proper inspection nearly impossible. Morandi himself had warned about rust from the nearby Ligurian Sea's moist air. By 2011, Autostrade per l'Italia knew the bridge was decaying and warned that a collapse could happen within 10 years. At least 14 days before disaster struck, a crack appeared near Pillar 9's southeastern stay. Yet workers kept adding heavy concrete barriers to an already stressed structure. The bridge was designed for a 50-year lifespan and failed just under 51 years after opening. 59 people went on trial, and a replacement designed by Renzo Piano opened on August 3, 2020. Number 8. Lotus Riverside Complex. Shanghai's Lotus Riverside promised modern luxury living until June 27, 2009, when a 13-story apartment building toppled onto its side. Workers had been excavating an underground garage, removing massive amounts of soil from one side of the structure. They piled the excavated dirt on the opposite side, creating a dangerous imbalance. Heavy rains soaked the soil days before, further destabilizing everything. At 5:30 in the morning, the building rotated 90 degrees and fell over completely intact. The structure was so sound that it remained largely undamaged even after hitting the ground. One construction worker died in the collapse. The incident exposed lax oversight in Shanghai's booming construction industry, where developers raced to build high-rises without proper safety protocols. The foundation wasn't designed to handle the stress. The structural engineer had warned against the aggressive excavation plans. Those warnings were ignored. Speed and cost savings trumped safety, resulting in one of the most bizarre building collapses ever documented. And now we have another plaza turned to dust. Number 7. L'Ambiance Plaza Collapse. Workers at the L'Ambiance Plaza construction site in Bridgeport were returning from lunch on April 23, 1987, when disaster struck. At 1:36 in the afternoon, 7 completed floors of the 16-story residential building suddenly toppled inward. The entire structure crumbled into a pile of twisted steel and shattered concrete in just seconds. 28 construction workers were killed, and 22 others were injured.
We remember the 28 construction workers who lost their lives in the L'Ambiance Plaza collapse.
The building was being constructed using a method called lift slab, where concrete floor slabs are poured on the ground and then lifted into place using hydraulic jacks. It was supposed to be faster and more efficient than traditional construction. But something went terribly wrong that afternoon. The most likely cause was that the concrete developed cracks under the stress of being lifted, leading to what engineers call a punch-through failure, where the slab breaks apart. Rescue workers spent days searching the rubble for survivors and victims. Within 2 years, a $41 million settlement was reached, though no one was ever criminally charged. The tragedy led Connecticut to ban lift slab construction temporarily, and when it was allowed again in 1994, strict new safety regulations were put in place. But all these disasters don't always only harm humans, but sometimes animals too. Number 6. Berlin's AquaDom. Berlin's AquaDom had been standing tall in the Radisson Collection Hotel for nearly 20 years when everything changed on December 16, 2022.
Now, a large aquarium at a hotel lobby in Berlin has shattered.
At 5:43 in the morning, the 82-foot cylindrical aquarium suddenly burst. 1 million liters of water exploded into the lobby, sweeping 1,500 tropical fish along with it.
1,500 tropical fish were washed into the street.
Witnesses staying at the hotel described waking up to what felt like an earthquake. The lobby looked like a battlefield afterward. Glass, debris, furniture, and dead fish were scattered everywhere. 2 people got injured from flying glass, but considering the timing, things could have been much worse. If this had happened even an hour later when people were moving around, the injuries would have been catastrophic. The tank had actually been renovated back in 2020. Workers had drained all the water, replaced the seals, and polished the acrylic cylinder to fix some scratches. But something went wrong. Investigators spent months examining 700 pieces of debris, testing every theory from sabotage to earthquakes. In the end, they couldn't pin down exactly what caused it. Maybe the adhesive seams loosened after 2 decades. Maybe someone accidentally damaged the acrylic during the renovation. Or maybe the material stressed out after sitting empty for so long before being refilled. This next project also proved that even a slight mistake can cost billions. Number 5. St. Francis Dam. Just before midnight on March 12, 1928, 12.4 billion gallons of water came roaring down a canyon northwest of Los Angeles. The St. Francis Dam had catastrophically failed, sending a wall of water up to 140 feet tall, rushing toward the Pacific Ocean at speeds approaching 18 miles per hour. At least 431 people died in the flood.
The St. Francis Dam Disaster. This thing killed more than 400 people, and I'm just learning about it, so I want to do some research.
Though the true number will never be known since bodies kept turning up for decades, with the last discovered in 1994. William Mulholland, the legendary engineer who had brought water to Los Angeles and made the city what it was, had designed and built this dam between 1924 and 1926. It was supposed to be another triumph, storing water for the growing city, but the dam had been built on unstable ground, sitting partially on an ancient landslide that shifted under the massive weight. In the days before the collapse, people reported leaks, cracks, and strange knocking sounds. On the morning of March 12th, the dam keeper called Mulholland out to inspect muddy water seeping through. Mulholland spent 2 hours examining everything and declared it safe. Hours later, the dam was gone, and so were hundreds of lives. This next hotel was another one to go down, causing damage beyond comprehension. Number 4. Hard Rock Hotel. The Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans was supposed to be a showpiece for the city when everything came crashing down on the morning of October 12, 2019.
A worker hurt in the collapse of an unfinished Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans earlier this month. He is in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
3 construction workers lost their lives that day. 36-year-old Quinion Wimberly, 63-year-old Jose Ponce Areola, and 49-year-old Anthony Floyd Magrette, and the tragedy would haunt the city for nearly a year. What investigators discovered was shocking. The steel beams supporting the 16th floor were seriously underdesigned, unable to handle the weight they were supposed to carry. The developer had wanted taller ceilings and a rooftop pool deck, but faced the city's height restrictions, so the design team reduced the size of the steel beams and columns to squeeze everything in. The upper floors essentially pancaked on top of each other, with vertical support beams spaced too far apart to hold the weight of the 17th and 18th floors. Workers had been sounding alarms for days before the collapse, even filming videos that showed steel poles warped and bowing under too much weight. Those warnings went nowhere, ultimately taking several lives. Number 3. Willow Island. West Virginia's Willow Island disaster on April 27, 1978 claimed 51 lives in what remains the deadliest construction accident in U.S. history.
The year was 1978. That was the day a West Virginia cooling tower under construction collapsed.
Workers were building a cooling tower at the Pleasance Power Station when the scaffolding suddenly gave way just after 10 in the morning at 166 feet high. The scaffolding began peeling away from the tower, sending concrete wooden forms, metal scaffolding, and all 51 workers plunging into the hollow center. One family lost 4 of 5 sons, a brother, 2 brothers-in-law, and 3 nephews. The core issue was deadly simple. Contractors only gave the concrete 18 hours to cure before bolting the next level to it, resulting in a compressive strength of just 220 pounds per square inch when it needed over 1,000. The contractor was using a secretive new technique and didn't even keep blueprints on site, fearing someone might steal the method. OSHA cited 3 companies for 20 violations, with settlements totaling $85,500. A memorial near the site honors the 51 people lost that day. Number 2. Tacoma Narrows Bridge, Galloping Gertie. Back in 1940, Washington State built what seemed like an engineering triumph. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge opened to traffic on July 1, 1940, with its 2,800-foot main span stretching gracefully across Puget Sound. It was the world's 3rd longest suspension bridge at the time. But there was something off about this bridge from the very beginning. Even during construction, workers noticed the deck moving up and down whenever the wind picked up. They nicknamed it Galloping Gertie because of this bouncy behavior. Designer Leon Moissef had modified the original design to save money, using shallow plate girders instead of deep stiffening trusses. The decision cut costs by millions but created a bridge that was far too flexible. Just 4 months after opening, on November 7, 1940, at 11 in the morning Pacific time, the bridge collapsed into the Tacoma Narrows. Winds of about 42 miles per hour caused the deck to twist violently until it finally tore apart. Only 1 life was lost, a black cocker spaniel named Tubby, who was too frightened to leave his owner's car. A new bridge opened on October 14, 1950, built with lessons learned from Gertie's dramatic failure. Locals called the replacement Sturdy Gertie, and now we are back in South Korea. Number 1. Seongsu Bridge collapses. Seoul's Seongsu Bridge seemed like any other commuter route on that rainy Friday morning in October 1994. At 7:38 in the morning on October 21, 1994, a 48-meter section of the bridge suddenly collapsed into the Han River below. 32 people died and 17 were injured when vehicles plunged into the water.
The Seongsu Bridge in Seoul fell into the Han River in 1994, killing 31 people.
A bus carrying 29 victims hit the collapsed section with devastating force. What made this tragedy worse was that it could have been prevented. At 6 in the morning that same day, drivers reported seeing cracks in the bridge, but city officials dismissed the warnings, claiming repairs had already been made. The bridge had been carrying over 160,000 vehicles daily, double its design capacity of 80,000. Faulty welding, rusted pins, and insufficient maintenance had weakened the structure for years. The bridge opened in 1979 and had never received a detailed safety inspection because inspectors only focused on bridges older than 20 years. President Kim Young-sam forced Seoul Mayor Lee Won-jong to resign just 12 hours after the collapse. These 20 construction failures share haunting similarities. Engineers ignored warnings, inspectors missed critical flaws, owners chose profits over safety. In nearly every case, someone knew something was wrong before disaster struck. Cracks appeared, reports were filed, experts raised alarms. Those warnings were dismissed until it was too late. Over 3,000 lives were lost. Tens of thousands were injured, and billions were spent in damages. Yet each tragedy sparked reforms that made modern buildings safer. These stories remind us that every construction shortcut carries a human cost. What are your thoughts about these incidents? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.